Imagine two people retiring on the exact same day. Same age, same savings, same career. One of them wakes up the next morning, tells everyone, celebrates, maybe books a trip, maybe upgrades their lifestyle just a little. It feels earned. It feels right. The other person does something quieter. They don't announce anything. They don't change their lifestyle. They don't celebrate yet. Instead, they sit down and start restructuring their life behind the scenes. 5 years later, their retirements look nothing alike. This isn't about who had more money. It's about who made better decisions in the invisible window right after work ended. Because the truth is, retirement isn't a finish line. It's a system change. And if you don't rebuild that system intentionally, your old habits will quietly run a life that no longer fits. So this isn't really about retiring. It's about what you fix before the world starts reacting to your retirement. Because once people know, your time stops being fully yours. Your calendar fills, your attention fragments, and the space required for clear thinking disappears faster than you expect. So what follows aren't luxury upgrades, they're structural ones. The kind that quietly determine whether your money lasts, whether your decisions compound, and whether your retirement feels stable or uncertain for the next 30 years. The first shift is this. While you were working, the question was simple: how much can I save? Now the question flips completely. Where does the money come from? This is where most people underestimate the complexity of retirement. They treat withdrawals like a convenience decision. Whichever account is easiest, that's where the money comes from. But every dollar has a consequence. Some dollars increase your taxable income, some affect your future healthcare costs, some change the trajectory of your entire tax profile for decades. And once that pattern starts, it's very hard to unwind.
So the real upgrade here isn't about withdrawing money. It's about designing the order of withdrawals before you ever take the first one. Because the first year quietly sets the tone for the next 25. Most people don't realize they're locking themselves into a tax pattern until it's already happening. The ones who do this right treat withdrawals like a long-term strategy, not a short-term action. Now, right next to that sits something even more fragile: your health coverage. Because the moment you leave work, the system that was protecting you disappears. And what replaces it isn't just a new plan, it's a new calculation. Your income now determines your costs in ways it never did before. Two people can have the same lifestyle, but pay completely different premiums based on how they structure their income. And here's where it gets interesting. The way you withdraw money directly affects how much you pay for healthcare. So these aren't separate decisions, they're connected. If you solve them separately, you create friction. If you solve them together, you create efficiency. And that efficiency can quietly save you more than most people expect over just a few years. Then comes a deeper shift. Most people think tax planning is something you do once a year. That mindset works when you're employed. It fails in retirement. Because now, every financial decision is a tax decision. Not next April, now. And the first year matters more than any other, because this is where you have the most control. Before required distributions begin, before income becomes more rigid, before your flexibility starts shrinking. There's a concept here that most people miss. It's not about minimizing taxes this year. It's about shaping your taxes over a lifetime. And those are very different goals. Sometimes the best move is to intentionally create income now so you avoid much larger problems later. But if you don't zoom out, you'll never see that. You'll optimize for the short term and pay for it in the long term. Now, while all of this is happening on the financial side, something quieter is sitting in the background: your beneficiary designations. Most people set them once and forget they exist, but these forms don't care about your intentions. They follow instructions. Even if those instructions are outdated, even if your life has changed, even if your will says something completely different. One unchecked form can override everything, and the difference between a smooth transition and a complicated one often comes down to whether this was updated or ignored. It's one of the simplest actions on this list and one of the most consequential. Right alongside it sits something people avoid for a different reason, not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. Your estate documents. These were written for a version of your life that may not exist anymore. Different income, different assets, different priorities. But unless you update them, that old version is still in control. And if something happens, decisions don't pause while people figure things out. They default
To courts, to outdated instructions, to whoever steps in first. Updating these documents isn't about planning for something negative. It's about making sure that if something does happen, the outcome reflects what you actually want, not what was written years ago. Then there's a different kind of inefficiency, the kind that quietly drains money every month. Insurance. Most of what you carried while working was built around protecting income, but now the income is gone. And yet, many people keep paying for protection they no longer need. At the same time, they overlook the risks that matter more now: liability, extended care, asset protection. So the goal isn't more insurance, it's alignment. Removing what no longer serves you and strengthening what actually protects you in this phase of life. Now we get into something that seems simple, but rarely is: cash. While you were working, cash was a buffer. Now it's a tool. And if it's not structured properly, it creates problems in places you don't expect. Too little cash, and you're forced to sell investments at the wrong time. Too much cash, and your money quietly loses its ability to grow. But the real mistake isn't the amount, it's the lack of intention. Your emergency reserve should be separate from your planned spending, and your planned spending, especially in the early years, should already be accounted for. Because if large expenses show up unplanned, they don't just affect your cash, they disrupt your entire withdrawal strategy. And once that disruption starts, it tends to cascade. Which brings us to something most people think they understand until they actually measure it: spending. Before retirement, you estimate. After retirement, you need to know. Because now, every dollar you spend isn't just a number, it's a decision that affects where money comes from, how it's taxed, and how long it lasts. And here's the pattern. People who don't track their spending early almost always drift. Not dramatically, but consistently. Small overestimations, small lifestyle expansions, until suddenly their plan no longer matches reality. The solution isn't restriction, it's awareness. You're not trying to spend less, you're trying to spend accurately. Because accuracy creates control, and control creates confidence. Now, the final layers of this system are the ones that shape your retirement over decades. The first is timing. Specifically, when you decide to claim benefits. Most people reduce this decision to one variable: monthly income. But that's only one piece of the equation. What matters more is how that income interacts with everything else: your taxes, your withdrawals, your flexibility. Sometimes the option that gives you the largest monthly check creates the most long-term friction, and the option that looks smaller on the surface creates more freedom over time. So the real question isn't how much do I get, it's how does this decision affect everything else? Because in retirement, decisions don't exist in isolation, they echo. And finally, there's one area that almost no one wants to think about, but everyone should. What happens when one of you is gone? Not emotionally, financially, because the system changes again. Income drops, but taxes don't fall in proportion. In fact, in many cases, they increase. The structure that worked for two people becomes inefficient for one. And if no one has modeled that scenario in advance, the surviving spouse inherits a system that quietly works against them. This isn't a rare outcome. It's the default, unless you design around it. And often the solution isn't dramatic. It's small adjustments made early while flexibility still exists. Which brings us back to where we started. Two people, same retirement date, same resources, different outcomes. Not because of luck, not because of timing, but because one of them understood something the other didn't. that retirement isn't about stopping work, it's about redesigning the system that replaces it. And that redesign requires something most people don't protect: space. Space to think clearly, space to model decisions, space to get it right before the noise begins. Because once you tell the world you've retired, the world responds. And when it does, your time becomes less your own. So the real advantage isn't having more money, it's using that quiet window before everything changes to build a system that actually supports the life you're stepping into, not just for the first year, but for every year that follows.